Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 5, Episode 37. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Well, this episode we're going to take seriously. Charlie Kirk was shot and killed this week, and although I had a bunch of other content that I was going to publish, I'm going to scrap it. This episode will be solely dedicated to one Charlie Kirk and the mission that was so dear to him that I admired him for, even though I disagree with a lot of the things that he said, and that was keeping free speech alive in the place that it is most important to keep it alive, college campuses. Thank you to all my loyal listeners who've been with me through thick and thin. If you're new to the podcast, please like, subscribe, thumbs up, 5-star, write a review, send to friends and enemies far and wide. This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. Please consider supporting.
Act 1. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
I didn't agree with a lot of the things that Charlie Kirk said. Ironically, one of the things that I was most in disagreement with him about was the fact that in a free nation with the Second Amendment that reads the way that ours does here in the United States, in the Bill of Rights, you have to accept a certain number of gun deaths. I don't agree with that at all. And in fact, I believe that Kirk was committing one of the errors that he routinely pointed out in other people, that they were using a modern lens to analyze or examine an issue that is hundreds of years old. The spike in gun deaths in the United States of America is basically a 40-year-old phenomenon. And the number of deaths per capita has gone up. In other words, yes, the population of the United States has grown, but the number of deaths per capita has far exceeded the number you would have expected if it had stayed consistent with population from the 1960s, from the 1940s, from even the 1920s. Although I didn't see eye to eye with him on a number of issues, Charlie Kirk was doing something that was very important in my mind in the 21st century. He was keeping conversations and debates alive in a very important place. Not online, not on social media. I don't give a shit about social media. It's one of the reasons why this podcast is what it is I don't give a shit about social media, and I'm not doing what I need to do to promote it via that medium. No, Charlie Kirk was going to the people. He was going to college campuses, and he was creating these forums and inviting people to come in and have conversations, maybe debates, maybe even arguments, but that people, human beings, would congregate in one area and see one another eye to eye, and they would talk. They may like what they hear, they may dislike what they hear, but they are there and they're doing it. They're living a life. They're not living an avatar's life through their phone. They're not seeing things in an echo chamber. You're actually able to look somebody else in the eye, and you're able to hear what their ideas are, and you're able to express your own, and maybe you come to some sort of consensus, and maybe you don't. But you haven't engaged in this online flame war like you would get on Twitter or X or whatever the hell they call it now. We're all people of a certain age. Yes, I know most of you who are listening to this podcast, we're all people of a certain age, and we take for granted that there were events on college campuses in the 80s and the 90s that are almost taboo in the 21st century. And the fact that Charlie Kirk and people like Ben Shapiro, who I respect what he does, but I disagree with most of the things that he says, they're going to these college campuses and they're saying, we refuse to allow there to be no debate, no conversation in this environment, one that is unique and special in the time of any child's life. If you were going to be educated and you were going to have an opportunity to learn how to voice your own opinion, to learn what your own opinions are, you have no better opportunity than to do it during your college experience. And if you don't do it during your college experience, you may never get that opportunity. You may never have that type of voice. You may never have a forum to allow yourself to challenge different ideas, to be challenged about your own ideas, because your employer doesn't give a shit about any of this. Here's your number. Punch the clock, do the work, get the fuck out, eat birthday cake on your birthday. I've seen a bunch of homages to Charlie Kirk, and I don't think that any of them do justice to the fact that he was dedicated to going to these college campuses. Look, the man had a platform on social media that was so broad and so pervasive and so persuasive that Trump credited him with influencing the outcome of the 2024 election. Males between the ages of 18 and 29 went to Trump based on the outreach and the footprint of one Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk did not need to go to these college campuses. He did not need to engage people the way that he was engaging them. He believed in what he was doing because he feared, and I think rightly so, that conversations on college campuses were being stifled by all this woke bullshit. And that a college campus is the last place on earth that you can have speech police. You have to be able to speak your mind. You have to be able to wrestle with ideas. And you have to be able to evolve. I credit my college experience, my undergrad experience, my master's experience, my law degree with an evolution, a change in the way that I saw the world, different ideas, which put me on a path to continue to challenge the things that I believed in. And frankly, that's one of the greatest benefits of going to college. A college degree in the 21st century isn't worth shit. They're not teaching these kids anything that they can go out and use in the business world. Maybe that's too harsh, but I just don't see colleges today being as dedicated to the mission of educating students given the monetary incentives involved now in the business of college. Colleges are like any other industry now. They are profit-driven enterprises. But one thing that they can't beat out of that experience, no matter how monetized they make it, is an opportunity to go to a place and congregate with a bunch of different types of people who have different backgrounds and different ideas than you and spend 2, 4, 6 years with them. I want you to consider that, dear listener. How many opportunities do you have in your life where you can go to a place and meet so many different kinds of people from so many different backgrounds? The only other one that comes to mind off the top of my head is the military. And the military is a completely different dynamic. Charlie Kirk put his money where his mouth was. He said, free speech is important, and I'm going to invite people who may not like me, people who disagree with me, to come and sit in front of me and debate me, ask me questions, challenge me. Maybe I'll change some minds. Maybe I'll have my mind changed. But I'm going to go and do this because I believe that it's important for the future of this country. And he did it. And it was that very thing that he was so dedicated to that made him an easy target. Charlie Kirk could very easily be a younger and a more polished Alex Jones. He could sit in some studio and make videos and publish them all over social media, and he would never have to go out in public, and he'd still be a very wealthy, influential man. He believed that free speech in this country, in the United States, was under threat, and he said, I refuse to stand idly by and watch as the beacon of free speech becomes a place of speech police, college campuses. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, because what you were doing was important. Even if I didn't agree with you, even if you didn't agree with him, dear listener, what he was doing was important for the future of this country. Because if you can't have debate on college campuses, where the hell else are you going to have them? I have one quick aside that I'm going to make on this piece. And if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know I think all of this conspiracy talk is fucking stupid. It's absolute nonsense. I unfortunately have seen the video of Charlie Kirk being shot, that fatal shot, and it's disturbing. And I do not recommend, if you have not yet seen it, to go watch it. It is very disturbing. Having said that, this gunshot wound indicates to me, I'm not a forensic expert, I am not a criminologist, but knowing what I know about guns and shooting, that shot was very close to being an absolute and total miss. You look at the shot where Trump got shot in the ear, and people say, we're talking about a quarter of an inch, and you see a former president and a man currently running for president have his head blown off on live TV. The guy that took all those shots at Trump started firing off a bunch of rounds. He was not a professional shooter. This kid who shot Charlie Kirk has hunted before in his life, at least according to the reports that I read. But you can tell that he's not an assassin because with as measured a shot as he was able to take, he didn't hit Charlie Kirk in the head and he did not hit him squarely in the chest. He hit Charlie Kirk in the neck. Now, I want you to think about this, dear listener. If you've ever fired a gun, a 200-yard shot with a high-powered rifle is not the hardest shot in the world. I have shot at targets 200 yards away with a 30-06, with a 308, and with a 270 short mag. It's not as difficult a shot as you would think. But, and this is a huge but, you can aim at a target and you will be slightly off at 200 yards based on variables that most shooters are not comfortable with being amateur shooters, and I'm one of those. I don't know how to calculate very well for wind velocity. I don't always know how well to calculate for bullet drop over different distances. Yes, a bullet will drop more at 125 yards than it will at 75 yards. It will drop more at 200 yards than it will at 150 yards. Does that make sense? It is very likely that this kid who killed Charlie Kirk was aiming at his head and missed based on the two variables that I just mentioned. Any possible drop in the bullet based on how far away he was and any type of wind. And the smallest amount of wind can affect the trajectory of a bullet depending on how far the bullet is traveling. You cannot convince me that this kid was aiming at Charlie Kirk's neck and shot him in the neck on purpose. It just doesn't make sense. Anyone who would take that shot at an animal, if there's a deer 200 yards away, you wouldn't shoot at the deer's neck. It's too improbable a place to shoot, and if you are looking for a kill, you don't take a shot at a place where it is improbable, A, that you're going to hit exactly where you want to shoot, and B, whether or not it'll be a killing shot. You would want to shoot at the torso of that deer, which would ensure that if there's any effect on that bullet over the course of time that it's traveling, the distance it needs to travel, that you're still hitting the target. All of this is to say that this shot that ended up ultimately, unfortunately, killing Charlie Kirk seems to me at least to be the shot of an amateur that was fortunate that a headshot still connected. As much as it will feed this dumbass conspiracy mania that we have online, it's not a conspiracy. This is a lone gunman who was familiar with the area, who'd very likely been on that college campus before, knew the area well enough that he knew which building that he could navigate to get a shot off, unfortunately got that shot off, and knew the area well enough to escape the general vicinity. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln, it's very difficult to stop a maniac with a gun, a lone gunman. And that is what this is, a lone gunman that unfortunately connected with a shot and killed Charlie Kirk. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.